What's up, guys? It is CEO of One coming back at you here today with another great house wash. Guys, look at this beautiful house. You guys probably can't see it from here, but the gutters were turning green. Underneath, all the awnings and eaves were green. Very, very dirty house. This one had traditional old school wood French windows, so we were going to be doing the house wash and cleaning the exterior windows with the water fed pull system. But this video is about the house wash. First thing we did here was went through and watered all these plants with a ton of water just to make sure everything below us was going to be, drenched with water before we hit it with a 1.5% sodium hypochlorite, which is what I like to wash a house with typically. We downstreamed this using the downstream on our 5-gallon a minute machine, and it worked out great. Like I said, we wet everything down real well just to make sure we didn't flash oxidize anything. Wet all the plants down, and then we started spraying this house. I switched over to the Davis shooter tip here to really get some up high distance and hit that gutter with a little bit of pressure, just so that we could knock some of the green off, even though we were technically bleaching it with the SH. Back to the M5 adjustable sprayer tip. The M5, I like it a lot because you can still reach a good bit, but it throws a ton of water, and you can always, kind of cut that down with a fan pattern by adjusting the nozzle, and that fan pattern will let you wash 6-foot swath. I am just convinced that when you're washing a house, a little bit more flow and being able to just really coat everything quickly makes a tremendous difference. I remember back in the old days, we would wash this with the Softwash tank. There's a video of it here on my channel that I built year and a half, 2 years ago. I don't even remember how long ago it was. But it wouldn't give you quite as much laminar flow as this will. You can tell here it's flowing out great. Nice wall of water, so to speak, coming out of the end of the nozzle when you're on a fan tip. This is great for railings because you want to make sure you cover every side of each individual rail thoroughly. Otherwise, you're going to leave green spots on the rails, and your customer will see it and say, hey, there's a dirty spot on the stair rails, or there's a dirty spot here. It's just easier to be able to walk around each side of it and really coat it well. And in a moment, I'll get in the inside in here and clean up underneath everything and around those fans. And when I do that, I'll shoot the other sides of these rails on the stairs and around the balcony there, just to make sure that it's absolutely clean on every angle so our customer won't give us a call back. House washing is probably one of my favorite services we do. It's very, very easy. There's not a lot of heavy lifting, just dragging the cord around and spraying stuff thoroughly. Probably takes longer to tape off everything, electrical, and to be careful around all that stuff than it does to even wash the house. Again, we're getting underneath all these eaves real good, up underneath all these edges. I tend to go around the ceiling fans as best I can while trying not to spray much water above them at, directly straight on so it doesn't drip into the fans. You'll see me here kind of do it at an angle so that it'll go above and around the fans without dripping a lot of it down. You'll still have a little drippage, but I always tell my customers just leave your ceiling fans and your outdoor lights off for about 24 hours just as a precautionary. Even though we're not spraying with hard pressure or heavy pressure, it's just one more thing you can do to make sure that there are no issues. Ideally it would trip a breaker, but I have washed several homes that have non-GFI plugs outside. I've washed several homes that have GFI plugs, and the GFI plugs are from 15 years ago and have gone out. Believe it or not, they do go out. And when they do, it no longer trips the breaker and it just starts a fire. So always best to avoid fire when washing a customer's home. If it is a really warm day, I always prefer to wet everything super well, house, windows, all of it, just so we don't have any flash oxidation or anything like that. It's just a great idea to go ahead and get the whole surface cooled off a little bit. Another thing this does is that when you're spraying chemical around, rather than the chemical being absorbed instantly into the home or whatever surface you're cleaning, it hits the water, which helps disperse the chemical evenly across the surface anywhere there was liquid. This is another great tip for pre-treating driveways. Wet the whole driveway thoroughly before you put your chemical down, and it won't instantly evaporate, which will give you a much better effect and will help spread your chemical more evenly because the chem hits the water, mixes with the water, and that pulls it across the surface of the concrete, as opposed to just hitting the concrete straight with chem, and then you got to use a lot more chem and water to get the concrete good and wet. And usually when I wash a house this size and it's a nice it's sunny that day, but it's probably only about 75. Because I've wet everything, I did this in 2 sections. I did one side and the back side with a section, and I did the front side and the garage side as a separate section. What I mean by that is I went ahead and wet everything down and then put some sodium hypochlorite on the entire house, those 2 sides, soaked them, washed them anyways, and allowed that to sit. I like to let it dwell 7 to 10 minutes, depending on how dirty it is. Sometimes I've let stuff dwell, 10, 15 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer. If you go longer than 10 minutes, I recommend having some your wash gun close by, and about every 10 minutes just spritz in the windows with a little bit of light rinse, light water, light SH that you were washing the house with, whichever you prefer. Just keep them wet, because the windows will actually be your biggest issue for callback, because if you let the sodium hypochlorite dry on the windows, it may not all rinse off well when you're rinsing, or you may have a window with an issue or defect or leak, at which point you can't just flood that window with water to rinse it off, because it will obviously let water in the house. So again, on this one, just wetting all the plants, making sure everything's wet, letting it sit for a little bit before we get in here and just kind of rinse it all out. I'm looking around everywhere right now to see if I've missed anything. You can generally tell because the white will have black or green still on it if you've missed it or haven't sprayed it well. The steps, you can see here, the wood in the steps have changed color significantly, meaning we coated them well. Everything except for the ends of the actual individual stairs, which, because it's not the top side, usually has a little bit more color there, but everything else looks pretty nice. So now all we do, simply wait a few minutes here and go ahead and spray everything off with a fresh water, get it nice and clean. Again, right now the sodium hypochlorite is attacking and acting as an algicide for all the living organisms on the house. That would be mold, bacteria. Gliocapsomagma is the oldest bacteria, one of the oldest bacteria known to man, and it's that black stuff that you can see on top of the roof causing those streaks. It's also the black stuff you see in driveways, and it grows on this paint as well. That's what we're trying to kill. So again, 10 to 15 minutes. You can usually tell that the whites are already bright white, looks like new paint. That's usually the good sign that everything is went according to plan, and you can go ahead and start rinsing it down a little bit. Using the M5 nozzle here so that I can adjust it to my liking, I'll go ahead and start using the water rinse. Looks like that's a pretty thin beam. There we go. Go ahead and make that nice tight shot, real high up, washing off the gutters. This will help get most of the discoloration off on gutters. There is another type of dirt that affects gutters that's called oxidation. People call it tiger striping. The sodium hypochlorite will kill any of the living bacteria, and the light pressure of the M5 or the Davis shooter tip will scrub the gutter off a little bit. But if it's oxidized and has tiger stripes running down it, it needs a restoration process for oxidation removal. That is time consuming, a little bit more dangerous chemical wise, because it can strip the paint off the house or the gutters. And it is a much higher, we'll say it's a higher charge than just a standard gutter brightening, which we might, come out and brighten a gutter with a sponge and rinse it off with this house wash solution. For us to, do an oxidation treatment on it would be expensive. Now, it doesn't mean we don't do them for people, but a lot of times it's better to just clean the gutters real good, and have somebody come out, reapply paint to them, something like that, because it'll take years for them to oxidize unless they're in a super warm environment with direct sunlight. Or if you hit them with a high percentage of bleach while they're 90 degrees, that'll do it, and it'll take that paint right off. So always wet your gutters if it's a hot day, long before you start applying sodium hypochlorite. Here you can see we're just rinsing everything really, really well. With these old style French windows that are wood, as they age, wood tends to shrink a little bit. Sometimes it rots, has all kinds of issues. The glass panes can shrink away from, the wood can shrink away from holding the glass panes in well and can cause leaks. So as I'm rinsing a window, I'm always looking at the window and pulling the water off for a moment to see if water is showing up on the inside of that window. If it is, I'll just go to a fan pattern, light spray, adjust my nozzle to a fan off the outside as best as I can so I don't flood the window out. This is a real good idea. I also set an expectation with my customers ahead of time. Walk around your house, make sure all windows are closed, and I even put seriously in quotation marks in the text message so that they know that other people have said they will before and have not. Once I've given that expectation and said, hey, make sure all your windows are closed. Are there any of your windows that leak in a hard rain that I should know about? If they say no, I've got that text message record that says, hey, I've done this. I always do it via text so that we have a message, and I'll screenshot a lot of them. Some of them I'll even save long-term depending on how the customer acts about certain things. But this always just kind of makes sure that you're protecting yourself. You're making sure that, hey, if there is a leaky window and they haven't told you about it or they don't know about it, that we'll find it together, but we won't place fault on one another in that circumstance. That's always a good thing to have. I never like to have an argument or anything like that with the customers. Just like it to go smoothly, and to do that you have to set a lot of expectations. Don't turn your lights on, don't turn these ceiling fans on, let's let everything hang out for a little bit. We've rinsed it down pretty well. I always tell them we don't use heavy pressure. I had one lady said, well, I heard your pressure washer and your pressure washer was running, and they don't know about all the different nozzle types, and a lot of times that makes a huge difference depending on what nozzle you use. We always like to wait about 10-15 minutes before we start removing the red tape. We use red tape to cover outlets, tops of lights, and stuff like that to keep out the electricity. We use the 3M red Stucco tape. Do not get the regular 3M red tape that's $4 or $5 because that'll take the paint off anything. But the red Stucco tape works pretty good. I also don't use blue painter's tape because once it gets wet, it becomes a sticky mess, and that just lets water get into the outlets and stuff anyways once it's wet enough. So always tape up everything, remove all your tape. This just allows you to clean much faster and more efficiently, and not to leave spots that you haven't washed because you were worried about the water. Sometimes I'll do that around air conditioners depending on how it looks like it was wired up, but that won't be too big of a problem with most of our customers. Just making sure to scrub these handrails real good where they have growth on them with a little bit of wide pressure. Alright guys, I'm CEO of One. We talk about how to sell these projects, these home services, what home services like gutter cleaning, pressure washing, house washing, roof treatments. If you're interested in learning anything about any of that stuff, make sure you hit subscribe, hit like on this video, go back and watch some of my other videos, and you'll start learning about some of the processes of pressure washing, house washing, and what chemicals we use. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything you would like to have help with, or like me to make a video about how we wash a particular surface, feel free to put it down in the chat or the comments. We'll see you guys next time.